episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Restoration Brokers of America. Did you know that 80% of businesses are unsellable? Let RBA work with you to ensure you maximize the value of your business when you decide it's time for a change. You've worked hard to build it, let RBA work hard to sell it. Visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com for more information. Hello there. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a great guest from the IICRC, who I'm honestly embarrassed I haven't had on the show yet. So I am joined by Mili Washington. She's the standards director for the IICRC, and there is a lot going on in the IICRC right now. There are 4 standards, I think, that are out for public review right now, a lot that's in development and in the works. So I'm guessing that Mili is very busy working through all these things, but I am excited to have her here and talk about standards and what they are and the purpose of them and kind of break down all of that. So Mili, thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to toss it over to you, have you kind of introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background with the IICRC and your role as the standards director.
Super. Hi, Michelle, and thank you for having me on the show. I can't believe either that this is our first time. But I'm happy to be here and happy to provide a little background and information, maybe some updates, maybe answer some questions as we go along. So just a little bit of introduction on myself. I have been in the standards realm now for 15, 20 years, something like that. I don't like to say too many because then I seem old, but I've been doing this a while, and I started off doing standards with AIHA, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, and I've been with IICRC almost 12 years now, so I feel like, like I've been around, but almost 12 years with IICRC, and it's been a really fun ride, just shepherding the process, the volunteers, the standards, and going from the concept or an idea for a new standard and taking it all the way to publication. It's a very rewarding and fun job, at least I think so. I know there are others who are like, standards, oh yuck, and we don't want to hear anything about it, but it's really a fun and very interesting and really a very important part of what we do in the industry. And so I'm always excited that we can share information, provide information, content, and the technical know-how with the industry that comes from industry standards. I am also a certified standards professional. I mean, how could I not be certified? I work for IICRC. So I am certified through the Society for Standards Professionals, SES. I'm also on their board of directors. And it's just my way of giving back to the standards community and the standards industry in a very small way. I've gotten a lot out of it. I've enjoyed it every day. And so it's my way of giving back. That's me.
Okay, I like it. That's busy. And I love that there's a board and everything for standards, because every industry has standards, right? So it's not just the restoration industry. So talk a little bit about the IICRC and the specific industries that the IICRC serves for people who maybe are a little more unfamiliar with the organization.
Oh, absolutely. So at IICRC, we serve the cleaning, restoration, and inspection industries. There's obviously an overlap among the three, but they are also very, very different industries which require different standards, as you can imagine, for cleaning purposes, restoration, which is different, which is more in-depth. And then, of course, inspection of some of those services. And so we have standards that cover all of those different areas. Some of our more popular standards are the water damage restoration standard and the mold remediation standards, and that's the S500 and the S520. All of our standards are developed in accordance with ANSI's procedures, their essential requirements, and IICRC is accredited by ANSI as an accredited standards developer, which means we jump through all their hoops. We get audited from time to time, and we have to follow a very rigorous process to develop and publish our standards. And it's as painstaking as it can be from time to time, the end result is really what speaks for itself. It's a credible, industry approved and industry accepted document. Mm-hmm. And it's well worth it to be able to, to be able to do that. And we are the only accredited standards developer in this industry, in all of these industries: cleaning, restoration, inspection. And so we stay very busy with all of the standards, because one of the things that ANSI requires is that not only we publish according to their requirements, which is numerous, but that each of our standards is then reviewed and revised on a 5-year cycle. And sometimes it's even shorter than a 5-year cycle. So, job security for me, but it really is a wonderful way to ensure that the standards are current and up to date. And if there's anything in there that is no longer serving the industry, then we're able to review and update the standards. So yeah, it's fun, and I'm hoping I'll get a chance to also tell you a little bit about the different standards that we're working on and some of the things that are coming in down the pipeline.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let's go there next. So what are the standards that are in review right now?
Oh, good question. Okay, so this is a record as far as I know. I've been with IIC, like I said, 12 years, and we have never had so many standards in public review. Now, what does that mean, public review? It just means that the draft standards are ready. So the committees, or what we call the consensus bodies, have prepared these standards. Some of them are new, some of them are revised standards. And so they've been working on it for a long time, and they are ready. So what they're saying is, okay, this standard is ready. And those who are in the industry, who we would consider to be stakeholders, who would have an interest in the standard one way or the other, are able to download the standard, the draft. It's very much in draft form at this time, but you're able to download the draft standard, review it, and then comment on it. And it's a very open, transparent process. The standards are available through our website, IICRC standards website. And anyone who has an interest can review and submit comments. And what's interesting is, as per the ANSI process, the committees that have written these standards have a responsibility to review comments and to respond to comments. So each commenter's individual comments will be reviewed and responded to. So that gives you, as a potential commenter, a lot of power. There's power in this process because we are bound by it. And so this stands as an open invitation to anyone who has an interest in our standards to please review and comment on them. We are looking for your input, because ultimately that makes our documents better. And so Michelle, you're right, that currently we have 4 standards available for public review. The S520 standard for professional mold remediation, the S590, and this is a new one. It's a standard for assessing HVAC systems following a water, fire, or mold damage event. So the 590 is a brand new standard. And then I'm happy to announce that we have 2 new fire standards that are currently available for public review. The S700 is a standard for professional fire and smoke damage restoration, so more of a structural fire restoration standard. And then the S760, which is a standard for professional wildfire investigations and restoration of impacts to structures, systems, and contents. So 4 very solid documents covering completely different areas of mold, HVAC, and fire are currently available. I can also share, and like I said, you can download the documents for free to your computers. And then we have an online commenting form. All comments must be submitted online using our form, and we will respond to them. I can also share, and this is a little bit early to share, but the S800, which is our standard for carpet inspection, essentially professional inspection of textile floor coverings, will be available for public review starting January the 13th. Okay. And so that one's coming up. And then the 540, which is our trauma and crime scene cleanup standard, will be available starting January 20th. So each of these standards have a little bit of a different timeline for public review and approval. And those are available on our website. The 4 standards that I mentioned earlier, 520, 590, 700, 760 are already in public review. And then the 800 and the 540 will be available very soon. We are hoping that we'll receive a lot of comments. There are very strict deadlines. Once the deadline has passed, we are not able to accept comments. We also ask that all comments be submitted completely so that we're able to address them and respond, in a timely fashion.
So are each of these standards written for cleaning, restoration, and inspection professionals, or are some of them like these are for the inspection professionals, these are for the cleaners? What does that look like?
Sure. And some of them are different. We do have very cleaning centric standards. I'll give an example of one that we're working on, which is the S400. It's the standard for professional cleaning, maintenance, restoration of the commercial built environment with a very heavy focus on cleaning. And so a standard like that is considered one of our cleaning standards. We have the S100, for example, which is carpet cleaning standard, and that's the focus of the standard. There is a restoration or an inspection aspect to that standard. That being said, because there is an overlap within the industries, we do reference the other standards. We cross-reference standards so that if someone is in need of additional information, that they're getting the right information from the right source.
Okay. So I'm looking at, you were talking about all these and I was thinking about the numbers and how they're all labeled. So it sounds like, is it true that maybe like the S500 is a route, and then like the S520, the S540, the S590, those are then along the way, like diving deeper into parts of like the water damage restoration process? Is that how it works?
We have tried, not necessarily succeeded at doing that, but I mean, that is the intent, Michelle, but we kind of, go in different directions depending on the need of the industry at the time. But to give you an example, yes, the S700, which is the structural fire standard, will be the parent fire standard, for lack of a better term, and then we'll have other standards that kind of fall under that, like the 760, which is wildfire specific. And so that is the intent, although there are only so many numbers, so it gets a little bit difficult to do that.
Of course. Yeah. So have you had it before where like a parent, I know that that's not the real term here, but I want to make that clear for people who are listening, but for the parent standard to be worked on while a substandard is being worked on?
Yeah. Wow. Substandard.
Sorry.
No, I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. But no, it is a challenge because, as I mentioned, ANSI requires our standards to be revised and published every 5 years. And so there are times when we're working on multiple standards and we're trying our level best to make sure that there is consistency and there is harmonization among our standards and that we're not saying anything that conflicts. And so it's always, the balls are all up in the air, and can we keep them all up, or at least can we keep the glass ones up in the air, right? Let the plastic ones fall. I don't care.
That's right.
Yeah. So we do try to make sure that there is consistency. We do try not only within our standards, but also within our standards and then our certification side. And it's a constant challenge, but one that we are, after always.
Yes. Okay. All right. And to people who heard me say substandard, I really didn't mean that it was substandard to the S700, just to clarify that. And so I don't want people to be listening. And anyway, okay. I don't want to add confusion. All right. So how are the committees formed of people that are working on these standards? How many people are generally on these committees? How are they formed? What does that look like?
Great question. First of all, being on a committee gives you leverage. It gives you a seat at the table. There's a joke within the standards community that if you're not at the table, you may end up on the menu. So, right. So that's my invitation for anyone who has an interest, even if you've never participated on a standards committee, to consider it, to give it a shot, because oftentimes committee members will say, at the end of the process, wow, that was such a ride, and we learned so much from it, right? Because it's a group of experts that are coming together and working on the standard, and they are putting their heads together to determine what should be the standard of care in the industry. And there isn't always a black or white, very clear distinction of what should make it, what shouldn't. And so that's why we have a group of qualified experts who sit and write the standard. We do have an open call for volunteers from time to time for different standards, depending on where we are. And I will share that we are currently accepting applications for a brand new standard that we're initiating on resilient floor coverings. So it's the S250 standard for professional cleaning and maintenance of commercial resilient floor coverings. So if anyone has an interest, we are accepting applications for that standard. And here's another big one, the S500. We intend to initiate that revision at the end of January. So if you're interested, please check on the IICRC website. We will open up the application process at the end of the month, and we'll keep it open for several weeks before we close that out. And the way it works, Michelle, to answer your question, is we will review all applications that come in. We have many things that we consider in addition to just technical expertise that, of course, is important. But ANSI also requires that we have a diverse group of stakeholders on any of our committees and that we have balance of interest categories. So we need to have producers, we need to have users, we need to have general interest, we need to have people who are representing completely different ends of the spectrum so that we have those opposing voices and that the standard is not biased one way or the other. And so, we take all of those things in consideration. We do have voting members and non-voting members who are, a resource that we pull on as needed. We try to keep our committees somewhat manageable because it gets out of hand very quickly. So in my mind, 15 to 18 is the magic number. From time to time, it could be higher or lower than that because we, depending on the amount of time, we may lose members over time. But that's when the non-voting membership also comes into play. So it's sort of a balancing act of keeping the right set of people involved for as long as it takes. Sometimes it takes a little longer than anticipated. But the goal is really to have a good group of stakeholders, to have balance, to have a good technical expertise background on the committee, and to have folks that are able to work together. That can be, that can be challenging depending on how much of an expert you may be in the industry. So it's always fun herding cats.
There are a lot of experts out there, and that is so true, that a lot of them are so knowledgeable and also sometimes have different perspectives on things or feel best practices are maybe slightly different in one way or another. So
right.
I'm sure. So how long, I know you're reviewing standards every 5 years, but how long in general does it take to create the standard the first time around, like the S700, maybe the S500 when it was first created? How long did it take for that to come to fruition from nothing to the many, many, many pages of document that it is?
So it depends, Michelle. It depends on the length of the standard. Some of our standards are a couple of 100 pages long. Some are 40 to 50 pages. So obviously the shorter ones take a less amount of time. It also depends on whether we have something to draw upon as our starting point, whether it's completely from scratch. But I think a fair average for a brand new standard would be somewhere between 2 and 3 years. We have put out standards in less time than that and in more, but somewhere in that range. And then if it's a revision, 18 months is usually sufficient. Again, it depends on the scope of the revision and how long it's been since the last standard was published, how many things have changed, how much pushback there is from the industry. So many different things, but it's a multi-year process.
So why is it so important for restorers to get involved in the review process itself? When these come out for public review, like, do you have recommendations of what restorers should be looking for when they're reading these, or what all of that looks like? Like, why is it so important for the entire industry to be involved and not just, I know a lot of people that are on these committees and they're fabulous and very intelligent. So they create great groundwork, but why does the rest of the industry need to be involved?
Great question. This is really the crux of standards, right? Why do standards matter? Why should you care? Why should you participate? And at what level should you participate? Of course, there's the level of being a committee member. You're a voting member. You show up week after week and you put together each sentence in the standard, and each word is painstakingly scrutinized and debated over. And so that's one way of doing it. And that gives you a voice. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone can commit to years of weekly Zooms and the burnout that comes from that. So the alternative is to participate through public review. You still have a voice. The committee, as I mentioned, has a responsibility to address your comments, to respond one way or the other, and to provide a rationale for not accepting your comments if that's what they decide to do. And so it is a very powerful mechanism for anyone in the industry. You could be new to the industry, or you could be a veteran in the industry. It gives you a voice. It gives you a sort of a way to provide some feedback to us. We may be missing things. We may have a group of 15 to 18 experts, but they may miss something. Or there may be some things that they're just not even aware of. And so we want to hear from others in the industry with different perspectives. We always ask that, any comment not come just simply as criticism, but really as a way to help us better our documents, because a better document for the industry is better for all of us collectively. This is not about IICRC. It's not about the committee that puts it together. It's about the industry. And an interesting fact that most people don't realize is that IICRC doesn't even have a vote on any of our standards. We don't have a vote. We cannot give it the thumbs up or down. We're simply hosting the party. We're simply saying, here's the table, come participate. And there are many different ways for you to do that. And so, why not, right? I mean, why not grab that opportunity to provide your input if you have something to say? We always ask for a reason for your comment, for you to provide alternate language, if that's what you're asking for, and to provide citations or to provide sources so that we understand the basis for the comment. And the more complete and thorough the comment is, the easier it is for the committee to then consider it.
Do people ever serve on more than one standard? Like, is there somebody who's like on the S500, but in something else in the 500 series, or like the 700 and the 760, since they're in development at the same time? Is there ever crossover?
Yes, I call them glutton for punishments. They do. We have multiple. And I think it's a testament to the process and the learning that comes from it. Folks wanting to do it again and again, folks wanting to come back and serve on the committees and serve on additional committees. It's really a wonderful testament to what they learn from it, and sort of the networking and the exchange of ideas that comes from it.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I was just glancing through my questions. I think I've asked most of mine. Anything else that you think that we should know? I think it's interesting, I guess, that the 700 and 760 are out. Are there people that are there same people on two of those? Like, is there collaboration between the two? How is that working?
Yes, and that's important to us as well, to have some level of crossover, especially with standards that are so closely related, because we don't want one to say something that contradicts the other. And so, some level of overlap is important and is intentional between, say, the 700 and the 760. And we find that, when the standard is put out, we're not getting comments that says, well, your one standard says A, and it's completely being contradicted. And so I think we're in a good place with making every effort to ensure that we have harmonization among our standards. We also work externally. So I'll give you an example. The S590, which is our new HVAC standard, we have worked very closely with NADCA on that standard to ensure that their guidance documents and our standards are aligned, and that we're not giving the reader or the user conflicting information. The S700, we have a really good partnership with RIA on that. And so our goal is not to create insular standards, but to really be open, inclusive, and harmonized in all of our efforts. That is what ANSI requires of us as standards developers. And it behooves us to do that because we're doing this for the industry. So what we put out should be consistent. And we work with other organizations. We take that role very seriously.
So these four standards that are in review, once the review process is done, what does it look like from here? How long does it take from them to go for this point to their public and for sale on the IICRC store, whatever that may be?
Oh, that's the finish line. We still have a ways to go. So we receive comments till the deadline, and then the committee, as I mentioned, addresses comments. They address each comment, respond to each comment, make changes to the standard, right? Sometimes they'll make changes to the standard based on the comments received. And then we look at the standard and we say, okay, we've made some changes. Are any of these changes substantive? Do any of these changes change the requirements as outlined in the standard? Sometimes the answer is nope. We've made some clarifications, we've made some editorial changes, and it looks better, but none of those changes are substantive. In which case, we of course we respond to commenters. We ensure that there are no unresolved objectors, unresolved commenters out there. And as long as we don't have any substantive changes, then we're able to move forward. We do a professional edit, a legal review, we get ANSI approval, following which we're able to publish. So many hoops to jump through, even in the best case scenario. If, on the other hand, the committee makes changes and there's even one substantive change, even one, then we have to do a second round of public review. And so we sort of repeat that process, because what we're saying is, thank you for your comments. We've made some changes that are important, and we need you to look at it one more time before we move forward. And so, it goes from either one round of public review to multiple rounds of public review. We repeat the process as many times as is needed. And of course, that takes time. Each round takes time. With the last edition of the S500, we had 5 rounds of public review. I hope we never have to do that again, but it was 5 rounds, and so that's the process. That's the ANSI process. And following all of those rounds, we were able to publish the standard. So it varies. My hope is that it'll be somewhere between 1 and 2 rounds.
I will cross my fingers for you. Better you than me. I think of what it takes to edit a magazine. I cannot even fathom doing a standard. So good for you. All right. So people who are listening to this, you can go to I apologize if you can hear that in the background. You can go to IICRC.org, or you can go to cnrmagazine.com and type in IICRC at the top, and you'll see some press releases there that'll send you to all the links for public review and to the IICRC website and all the places that you want to go. So please be sure to submit your public review, be involved as an industry in these processes. That is how we become a better industry. So, all right, Mili, anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up? I really appreciate your time.
No, I just want to extend an open invitation to anyone who has never participated in standards. Feel free to submit a comment. That's a great way to get your feet wet, and to kind of see what a standard looks like, what it feels like to read. And maybe your next step would be to consider participating in one of our committees. So just an open invitation from my side. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Have an awesome rest of your day.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.